Today we're joined by Robbie. How are you doing, Robbie?
I'm doing very well, Porkys. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, mate. I can hear you.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant stuff. Thanks for having me on, son.
No problem, mate. No, whereabouts are you from, Robbie?
I'm from Peckham, London, son.
Are you? Oh,
Yeah, I'm from Peckham. Yeah, I'm from the heart of Southeast London, my man.
good man. How long you been a boxing fan?
Oh, I've been watching boxing. It used to drive me old lady crazy since I was about, oh God, I'd say about 13, 14.
Yeah.
Since the days of bloody Larry Holmes and them sort of people, you know what I mean?
Proper fighting.
Um, Oh yeah, yeah, proper fighting, man. I've seen it over the years how, boxing's kind of changed now to how it was, you know what I mean? Unless people are chucking big money after these fights, they just don't happen. But back in them days, you were when you were a fighter, you were out to prove yourself, you know what I mean? That no
Yeah.
one was better than you. But now people only want to prove themselves when Turkey has a sheikh is just chucking big paychecks after him. You know what I mean?
What do you think about the current state of play? We fighters trying to protect their O's and not wanting to take risk and waiting for the phone call from the man that you just mentioned.
Well, this is, as I said, this is what's happening now. You see, they're not really in it to prove themselves at all. They're not really in it for legacy. They're in it for unless you can chat big money after me. I'm gonna delay, make excuse after excuse. This is what happened with. I mean, I'm not slating the guy, but this is what happened with Tyson Fury,
Mm.
when they were trying to make the Usyk fight before Turkey had a sheikh come on the scene. It was one problem after another with Tyson Fury. He didn't want to really engage at all with Usyk, you know what I mean?
Mm.
And I think it's only because, people probably handling his affairs and probably himself, they said, look, Tyson, you know what? There's so much money on the table there, you may as well take the fight. And you see what this is what, and then you get a rematch clause, I guess, with that sort of level fights that, there's so much money kicking around that he just took the fight. But you see what happened in both fights. You well lost both of them, and which is probably why he was avoiding the guy in the first place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I thought
Yeah.
it took him to the ring kicking and screaming personally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is what happens. I mean, it's a bit sad, really. I was never. I mean, some people like Turkey as a sheikh and say, well, you're getting the fights that we always wanted. So what's the problem? But there is still a problem because they're only doing it for this big payday. They're not doing it because they want to be real champions and go down in history. They're doing it because of these big paydays. You know what I mean? And I think that's his answer to everything. If negotiations are stalling, let's just chuck some money after it. You know what I mean? And if you go high enough, they'll make the fight. But it's not quite the same, is it? It's just not quite the same at all.
They'll sell the souls, won't they, for a pound now, 99.
Yeah, they will. They will. They will. Yeah. And I don't particularly like because when you look back to the old fighters, back in the days when you had fights at the York Hall, you know, guys you probably never even heard of, you know what I mean? And they're just going there and they're getting paid like 10 grand or something, you know what I mean? And you'd think, and yet you remember the fights. You don't get that sort of thing now, you know what I mean? It's who can sign up with Eddie Earn and because he's got connections and, who can put me on a Saudi undercard and, I can make good money from this. And, but it's not about legacy at all, you know what I mean? It's not, which is a bit of a shame, really.
Yeah, do you think that Tyson Fury will fight Usyk a third time, Robbie?
Yeah, I think he will. I think he'll fight him a third. Well, because I think Daniel Dubois hopefully will lose because I haven't really got the time of day for Daniel Dubois myself.
Yeah.
I think no, I don't really he's not really my cup of tea. I think he did very well against AJ, but I think it more showed where AJ was at rather than where Dubois was at. You know what I mean? In that fight. But the way Don Charles is carrying on, it's kind of putting me off Dubois by the moment. You know what I mean? Every time I hear him talk, it's like they want to give Usyk no credit whatsoever. You know what I mean? And this guy's former undisputed cruiserweight champion and twice, well, not twice, but he's former now he's the undisputed. Well, he was the undisputed heavyweight champion, and they still want to give him no credit. You know what I mean?
Mm.
They're still saying Dubois won their fight. But in answer to your question, I think Usyk will beat Dubois, and I think Fury, because of the money, I think he'll probably fight Usyk again, and I think they'll get it on. He says he wants to fight in England this time because he doesn't feel he'll get a fair shake. But you see, Tyson Fury's been out the ring a fair bit of time now. You know what I mean? And he doesn't come across to me as though he lives the life when he's not fighting. You know what I mean? You get himself into shape, of course, when he's got a fight coming up. But I don't, I can't put my hand on my heart and say that that guy really lives the life outside of boxing. You know what I mean?
Oh.
But he's got a name, so people always throw money after him. But I don't think he'll beat Usyk. No, I think he'll fight him, but I don't think he'll beat him. No.
Tyson Fury's had 12 fights in 10 years
Yeah, this is what I mean. I
since
know.
Vladimir, which were 10 years ago. So he's
Yeah.
not very active, is he really?
No, he's not. No. You see, that back in them days, if you remember back in the 80s when Mike Tyson was fighting, sometimes he'd be fighting every 3 or 4 months,
Four times a
You
year.
know. Yeah, he'd be fighting he'd be defending that title, and you don't get that now. You just don't get that now. And with Fury, there's always some kind of excuse why he's not in the ring. He's retired and he's not retired. And then, they'll call big names and then say, oh, there's a problem here and we want the fight. They don't want this kind of thing. And it just kind of keeps him out of the ring. But me personally, I don't think inactivity does Fury himself any good because, you know, I don't know. I think he needs to be active himself. But I think with Alex Sheikh coming on the scene, I suppose he doesn't need to be, does he? Because every time he steps in the ring, he's getting these huge, huge paydays that I don't know if they're really warranted, these paydays. But this is Alex Sheikh's answer to everything. You know what I mean? Just chuck money after it and we'll get the fight. So what's the problem? There will be a problem when Alex Sheikh decides to go into Formula One or into tennis and just leaves boxing altogether. Then we're going to really see where people are at. Because if you don't really want to fight and you're chasing these big paydays because you know you can get them, when he withdraws that lifeline from you, then what are you going to do?
Mm.
You know what I mean? And this is where the problem lies further down because he's not just going to keep doing this. You know what I mean? There's not enough stars in boxing, I don't think, to constantly be chucking money after it like this. I don't think, anyway.
No. Do you feel that Usyk's really bothered if he has to fight Fury again? Because it seems to me that he's having to fight people too, and sometimes, well, they're talking about
Mm,
a third one for Fury. He's done Joshua twice. They're talking a
mm,
third one with Joshua at some point. He's fighting Dubois a second time. He's already done Joyce, Chisora, and
mm.
uh, Bellew, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Ran through the lot of
Well,
crits, hasn't he?
well, I think with Usyk, he hasn't. To me, he's got nothing to prove himself. I think he's done everything that can be asked of a fighter, especially a heavyweight fighter now. But I think he's probably him and his management are probably saying, well, Usyk, you're good enough to be cashing in on this pot of gold that Alex Sheikh is, put on offer here. This is why I think he's fighting these guys. I think it's because you see, I don't know how much money Usyk made from boxing prior to Alex Sheikh coming into the game. You could say Joshua made a bag load of money even before he met Turkey Al-Sheikh. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think the same can be said for Usyk. I don't think he was as popular as, say, AJ. You know what I mean? So I don't know if he's made that bag. So I think he's probably cashing into it, as it were, and said, well, why not? You know what I mean? I can still beat these guys, so why not get paid? But I think after he beats Dubois, I think he's going to start struggling for motivation because I don't think Fury would give him a really competitive fight, myself personally. I think he would do the same as he did in the other two fights with Fury. And Fury's not really a big puncher. With Dubois, you could say he's got a risk of getting caught by Dubois, who can hit, but I don't think Fury can hit that hard. So you've got to think, well, is Fury athletic enough to keep away um, from Usyk for 12 rounds? And he's now a lot older than when he first fought him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I don't think he is. So I see another beating for Fury again, and then another load of excuses. You know what I mean?
What about being robbed?
Yeah, about being robbed. Yeah, he's still saying the other day that, I mean, he's probably got his dad in his ear, and John Fury saying, well, and probably Frank as well saying, well, every time you go on the camera, just say, look, I was robbed. I felt I won the fight, this and that. You see, some guys, unless they get knocked out, they're always going to say, I feel I won the fight. You know what I mean? And this is the situation we've got with him. He's never going to admit. I mean, anyone watching them fights can see he lost. You know what I mean?
Got took to
But
the ball.
he's just never going to say it, is he? I mean, which is really poor. You know what I mean? The I don't know. I just think it's bad taste, and I think this is why he avoided Usyk in the first place. He didn't really want to fight Usyk. You know what I mean? When they were trying to make that fight, there was one issue after the other. You know what I mean? And it was never getting over the line because I don't think he wanted it. He just didn't want the fight. But now you can see why. You know what I mean? Because Usyk is really stages above him. You know what I mean? Very, very good fighter, Usyk. Very technical. And I really hope he gets the job done against Daniel Dubois myself.
About 9 years ago, it was around about my birthday, 2016, so it'd be coming up 9 years. I've told
Mm,
the story before, but for those who haven't heard it, there were me, David Allen. We went over to see Peter Fury. And that way, Peter said, "Do you want to spy, Huey?" And he said, "No, I'm just coming over for the day out with me." So we went over to Bolton.
mm.
Me, Robin Reed, Dave Allen, Tyson, Huey, Peter, John, all sat about. And I was throwing a few names about, and Tyson had just said, "Oh, he's a bum, I'll knock him out. He's this, he's
Mm.
that, blah, blah, all names I was throwing out." And then when I mentioned Usyk's name, all of them all went, including
Yeah,
Tyson. And that were in 2016.
that was way back. Even then, they were
He said,
wary of
"Oh,
him.
Peter," and he was a cruiserweight then, I think. Peter Fury said, "Oh, he's a serious operator, very, very technical." And this is not long after. I mean, a couple of years before that, he took Vladimir apart in Austrian Alps sparring, Vladimir Klitschko, in front of Johnny Nelson, Glenn McCrory, Bean, and Alt Skylar. So everybody knew in
Wow.
the industry that this guy's a southpaw. He's the
Mm.
real deal. He's a real deal. He'd already done Olympic gold medal heavyweight because Joshua won it as a super heavy, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
There were no doubt in anybody's mind that Usyk won every single fight, whereas Joshua, he only really beat
Mm.
Zhang in the Olympics, didn't he? The others were like
Yeah.
all-time gifts. So everybody knew he was the real deal. And when
Yeah.
Joshua had to fight, before Joshua fought Usyk, actually, Eddie signed Usyk, didn't he? Do you remember?
I remember. Yeah, he did. He did sign him. Yeah, that's right.
Like he signed Luis Ortiz and
Yeah.
he signed them guys to protect Joshua his investment to keep them away from him. Now he threw David Allen in with Ortiz, who'd had about 10 or 11 fights at the time, and he threw Eric Molina in with Joshua. That should have been the other way around. It should have been David against Eric Molina, which would have been a good fight for David.
It
Not
would have been,
Ortiz.
yes.
Ortiz at the time were the interim WBA champion and number one ranked. David Allen should have been nowhere near that guy. Now, David Allen's
No.
come apart like that down the side. and they put jelly. He knocked David about like that. David's a tough kid, and that for me, Eddie Hearn went down, or Eddie Hills. He went down in my estimation after then. But Joshua did as well because he should have been screaming for that fight because they had horses signed to him. He had a fight in Monaco, if you remember, the first one, and then David Allen, if my memory serves me correct. Or it might have been the other way around. But point I want to make is they protected Joshua from Usyk. But when Usyk came to fight Joshua, he weren't with Eddie, and they had no choice then because they were knocking on the door. So they had to fight.
Exactly.
I think Joshua will beat before he got it ring with him. Me, I really do. Do you mind Derek Chisora telling, you'll run over him and all that? He's going to say that because he's Finchley, isn't he? It's like you get
Yeah, he is. They're both
Juggy as
Finchley. Yeah, they
Oliver.
are.
Juggy as Oliver always goes into bat for anybody to do with Finchley, doesn't he?
Exactly. You
Don
see, the thing with
Charles, is he Finchley as well? Because
I
Don
think he
Charles is
might be,
isn't he?
I think he might be Finchley. Was
Yeah,
he?
I hate Finchley, because Derek won it, but Don Charles,
Yeah, yeah.
he's like an air bomb repeater. Every time I hear him open his mouth, all he's going on about is this low blow. Don,
Oh,
it's become
oh
boring,
man.
very boring.
God, don't it just get on your nerves hearing this geezer talk about this low blow? I mean, what the hell? He was well beat. Look, what success? Oh, it's all right. So what happened after that alleged? All right. So what happened after the low blow? What the hell did Daniel Dubois do in that fight?
Nothing.
All right, so you've the geezer's gone down from a low blow, right? So now you've got the advantage because he's a bit winded. What have you done? Nothing.
He just
You see, this is the thing. This is what I don't like about Don Charles. I mean, I think to me, he comes across like a bitter man, because I think he's been in boxing for a long time. He's never really had a real credible stable of fighters. Chisora's axed him a few times, hasn't he? And he's gone back and then he's axed him again. I mean, you don't see fighters rushing to go to Don Charles, do you?
No.
No, you don't. And there's got to be a reason for that. You see him with all other trainers, but you don't hear his name. And I think he's a bit bitter about that. You know what I mean? Flagging on about, oh, we think we won the fight. Usyk made a big deal. What did your fighter do after Usyk got up from that low blow? What success did Daniel Dubois have in that fight?
No.
You know what I mean? It's very, going back to Usyk, Porkys, the thing is, I was saying to people, I do like AJ, but the thing is, I feel with Usyk, this is the importance of learning your trade. The thing with Usyk, I don't know if the rumors are true, but I think in the amateur days, Usyk had over 300 amateur fights.
350.
So,
He won 335.
oh, I mean, think about this for a minute. That kind of record. He's in those amateur fights. He's seen many Anthony Joshua that's turned up in some. He would have seen this before, and this is the importance. And they can always call it to his remembrance, as it were. Do you remember when we were an amateur? We fought that geezer who looked just like AJ. Do you remember that style he had? That big body, beautiful, that can whack. But if you get into the left or the right or whatever the game plan was, we'd always beat him. He'd seen many AJs, you see. And people thought, a lot of people thought AJ would win the fight because he was on a good roll, you know what I mean? But the thing is, I don't think he had the proper experience to deal with an Usyk, you know what I mean? I think he didn't really have that great an amateur career, AJ. You see, the thing with AJ, I believe, I think if he was with Frank Warren, his career would have gone a bit different because Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn are two completely different kind of promoters. You see, Frank Warren is in for the long haul. You know what I mean? He'll gradually step you up in competition. Then you'll fight for a British title. Then he'll step you up. You'll fight for a European. And he'll go along those routes and get you in line with the WBA for a title shot. But not before you've had a good few fights to, see where you're at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think with Eddie Hearn, if you show a glimpse of talent, he'll start talking big fights for you. And big names. I mean, to think of, I mean, I don't mind Conor Benn actually, to be honest with you. A lot of people don't like him. I don't mind him, but the thing is, what worries me about Conor Benn is he hasn't learned his trade. He's not even fought for an area title or a British title, this guy, and yet they're throwing money after this guy. I mean, they're already talking when he moves back down to welterweight after the Eubank rematch at I think it's 168 they're fighting at. They're already talking about Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, WBC challenges for the world title. You've got to learn your trade, like Usyk has, because you're going to come a cropper, like AJ did against Ruiz. When that punch landed from Ruiz, AJ was like, "What the hell?" Now you see, if he'd had a good amateur career, he'd have faced punchers, and got the experience of how to deal with it, to grab, hold on, stay away from this kind of guy. You'd be able to sort of sense what the guy was coming with, you know what I mean? But no amateur career. And this is what happens. You get caught and you're like in the wilderness. You don't know what the hell to do. And I think this is unfortunately what Conor Benn has left himself open to because of the way he and his promoter operate. I mean, Conor Benn, he's cocky, he's arrogant, he's willing to fight, which is good. But you've got to learn your craft. You know what I mean? If you're a chippy and you haven't really learned your craft, you'll get a door that doesn't fit that bloody frame, and you'll be all over the place. You know what I mean? The job will take forever. You know what I mean? You won't know what the hell to do
Yeah,
because you ain't seen these sort of things. You ain't experienced nothing, have you?
yeah,
You know, and I think this is the issue with AJ, why the career's gone a bit funny now. And I think this is what Conor Benn has also left himself open to happening to him, not properly. I mean, to think you've not even fought for a British title. I mean, would he ever fight for the British title now? I wonder. Probably not.
no, no. They don't want to pay sanctioning fees, do they? Or they just all they want is. I don't think he'll fight for any belt. Me, I think he just wants these gimmick fights, a bit like Chisora, Jarrell Miller. They're not going to be
Yeah.
world titles. I don't.
Oh,
They just want to get
oh,
money piled up, don't they?
Porky, please don't call the name Gerald Miller. Oh,
Well, it's
God.
all over
If it's
talk
one.
sport and all big channels this morning and yesterday.
Oh God,
Don't
Porky,
make
if it's
it up.
one name, Porky's.
Hello, Miller,
If it's
baby,
one name, oh my God,
big baby Miller.
Miller. If it's one name in boxing that can get my mood to change, and it's almost impossible to rub me up the wrong way, but it's that guy. You think of the amount, the drug failures of this guy, and yet he's got the urge to get on camera and be slating AJ, and to be slating other fighters and demanding these big paydays. And Turkey Sheikh's quite willing to have this guy on his cards, which is amazing. He shouldn't even be in boxing, this guy.
Yeah.
And what disappoints me in a way, I mean, I'm not a hater of Eddie Hearn because I do actually like Eddie Hearn. But what is very disappointing for me is because before Turkey Sheikh come on the scene, Porkies, when the Baby Miller and AJ fight fell through because Miller was found with three different PEDs in his system,
Yeah.
the stuff bodybuilders and weightlifters use. That's why the fight fell through. Nothing to do with AJ, why it fell through. He was willing to take the fight, you know. But the thing Eddie Hearn said, he lent Miller money, I believe, prior to the fight. He never got it back. I think probably for training expenses or what have you. He never got it back. He said, and with this failed PED tests, he said he could have potentially killed my fighter. He was going there with an unfair advantage. He'll never work on a matchroom show again. I think Frank Smith more or less said the same thing. And what a U-turn now. I mean, to see Eddie Earn on stage with and around Miller, and everyone's all smiles. Well, what happened to the Miller who was on PEDs that could potentially have injured and really hurt your fighter when you were saying that. You're not saying that now, are you?
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, I wonder what AJ feels about this. I mean, this is his promoter, all around Miller, and these people from Sky and the Zone, like they've totally forgotten. I mean, even Carl Froch the other day when he was talking to Miller, when Miller come, Froch was talking and Miller come up and said, "Well, I haven't forgotten. I've got a memory of an elephant. I haven't forgotten what you said about me." Blah blah blah. And then Carl Froch seemed to really backtrack, like he really seemed to swallow it. And he's talking about, oh, when have you ever known the Cobra to swallow? Well, you swallowed it then. Why didn't you ask him? Well, the reason the AJ fight fell apart was because you were on PEDs. What's that all about? Have you even ever apologized for being on these PEDs? But you're here walking around on these Saudi cars demanding big £1 million paydays. It's amazing. It really is.
What
It's
did you,
like,
what did you think, Robbie, to Carl Froch's interview with Crusher Ben?
look, you see, this is the thing. You can only think to yourself behind the scenes. Uh, I mean, I don't know for sure, but it was a poor interview, wasn't
What's your favourite tattoo?
it?
Big media man. What's your favourite tattoo, Connor?
I mean, you have to wonder what he would say if he was interviewing AJ, because Carl seems to be one thing when he's talking in that house of his in Nottingham, but when he's actually now face to face with these people, you sort of sense a backtrack. You don't sense the same energy, do you?
Squeaky bum.
Yeah. So I wonder what if you AJ, because sooner or later, them two are going to cross paths, aren't they? So I wonder what he's going to say. He's probably not going to say anything.
Yeah, they'll just high five each other and just laugh and say, "It is what it is," and be humble and all that. And AJ will just say, "It's a fight. It's a fight. Be humble." Do you know what I mean? All that rubbish. What do you think about the current state of play with Bricktop and Eddie Hills? Bricktop's got a Coley, WBC #1. Chisora's at top at IBF rankings. Uh, Atoma's at top at WBO and Wardley's at top at WBA. He's got Dubois
Mm.
with a belt and Fury at top at rankings with Ring Magazine. So he's 6 men strong in heavyweights now, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is the again experience when it comes to not only fighting but to managing and promoting. Frank Warren has really done what Don King used to do back in the 80s,
Mm.
which is like get all if I get all the heavyweights, you've got to come to me, and if I get them high enough in the rankings, I potentially I could have world champions all from my stable. Eddie Hearn. Um, hasn't really had the experience of a Frank Warren. Eddie Hearn's a bit brash, a bit loud. He's a good promoter, but he's not an experienced promoter like Frank Warren. And I think the problem Eddie Hearn is having now is he hasn't really got any fighters apart from AJ. Any heavyweight, any good heavyweights. Is Moses Atama? Is he with Frank Warren as well? I don't know who's he with.
Yeah.
Is he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's with. Oh well, even worse. Because I mean, who has Eddie Hearn got apart from AJ?
He's got
AJ will all.
Cooney and AJ and Johnny Fisher,
So,
Elmer Fudd.
oh
Go
God,
on.
I don't want to talk about Johnny Fisher. I mean, that guy, Johnny Fisher beat who was that guy he beat?
Babbitt.
Yeah, he beat him, and then suddenly he was a second coming, wasn't he? You know,
Yeah,
I
and that's
mean,
not what happened.
oh my
They bumped into
God.
Rhino, and then they wanted
Mm,
Rhino rematch. And Mark Tibbs and his dad said, "Don't take that rematch. Have 3 or 4 more fights. We'll get Rhino down the line." They went, "No, no, no." The dad and Eddie Hills, "No, we're
mm,
going for Rhino, and we'll have a third one if we lose." And blah blah blah. Well, there you go.
yeah.
Who's to say that they're not looking to do that third one now because they parked Dave Allen up and Fisher, aren't they?
Yeah, they have. They have. You see, the thing is, no way was. I mean, if Dave Allen kind of blows hot and cold, he's a good seasoned pro, Dave Allen, but he kind of blows hot and cold. But you see, on his day, there was no way Johnny Fisher was ever ready for this guy. He was never experienced enough, really. You
No.
know, all Fisher is a big lamp, you know, with a cult following from Romford. Let's be honest. You know what I mean?
Uh,
Oh my
what do
God.
you see happening with Elmer Ford and Mark Tibbs? Because usually when they lose, first they're angry, then they're upset, then they'll play the blame game. You think Mark Tibbs will be out the door, even though technically he's not really done anything wrong? Do you think that he could be gone, or do you think they'll stay loyal? That the Fishers? How do you see that happening, Robbie?
Well, I don't think I think they should keep hold of Mark Tibbs because they've got a very I think they've got a good trainer there. But I think they made a I think they should keep him because I think a business decision was made here to fight, you know, in this because the money kicking around again, that's why they took I think deep down Mark Tibbs probably knew this guy wasn't really
Ready for
ready.
Rhino?
No, he weren't. He weren't. You know, he just weren't ready. But you know, when they offer you a certain amount of money, and Mark as a trainer would obviously be getting a cut from this money, you know, and whoever else. I'm not just saying Mark, you know, just did it for the money, but you know, sometimes business decisions are made, and this is what happens. You know what I mean? You know, you can sort of rebuild after the first loss and um, blah blah blah. They said, well, you know, you're taking 3, 4 fights to rebuild. You're not going to make any money. Really, you may as well go straight into the rematch when it's fresh in everyone's mind, and this is what you'll get paid. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think this is what they've done. I think they should keep Mark Tibbs. I see nothing really wrong with Mark Tibbs. Um, I think when he was with Dillian White, I think Dillian White had his best days under Mark Tibbs.
But he never
But
lost.
then, no, he never lost, exactly. But now Dillian seems to want to do his own thing. I think Dillian has now started to believe his own hype, and, you know, which he shouldn't have. And now his career seems to be kind of all over the shop, doesn't
How do you see Dylan White, Moses, Atome going?
it? Well, I see. I think Dylan has probably taken this fight solely for the money. I think he's a lamb to the slaughter in this fight. I think Moses at the time was going to beat him and beat him quite bad.
Yeah.
But I think Frank Warren has probably said to Dillian, look, this is a good fight, you know, and probably gassed him up a bit, make him feel that, you know, he's experienced enough. You can rounds, you've got a good chance of all that crap. But really, he just wants to boost, I think, Moses Atama's profile. And Dillian White is still a quote unquote name in British boxing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's a good name to have on your record, you know what I mean?
Mm.
So, but I don't think Dillian White has a chance really of winning this fight. But he too, Dillian, I mean, has made a business decision based on how much they've offered him for this fight. So he's probably thinking, well, win or lose, I'm still quids in. Otherwise, I could fight the likes of a Lawrence Coley and lose, and I won't get anywhere near that kind of money. You know what I mean? Because I don't think Lawrence Coley's really. I mean, he's a heavyweight, but he's not really that big a draw. You know what I mean? In terms of people turning out to watch his fights, I think most of the time has shown he's exciting, young, and I think he is the real deal from what I've seen. I think you do away with Dillian White myself. Um, with regard to Dillian, you know, I don't know, man. Dillian, you know, these failed drug tests, Porkys, you know, I don't like it. I really don't. And what I don't like, at least with Conor Ben, right, when he failed the drugs test, he come out and said, not guilty. I didn't take this, blah, blah, blah. I don't know how it got. At least he said something. Dillian White, when he fails these drug tests, you just don't hear from him. And the next thing you know, he's back in the ring and he's earning these big paydays. You think, well, how can this be right? Where's the apology? Where's the explanation? This is madness, you know, really. about when people fail these drug tests, they don't have to say nothing. They don't even have to give an explanation. You know what I mean? That all they have to do is just stay quiet for a while, and then you'll be back. You know, people have other things to talk about, and then you'll get your paydays, which is exactly what's happening with Dillian. I mean, before the Oscar Rivas fight, there was a failed drugs test of some kind that went on there, right? We never got the. He was there was meant to be a B sample that was tested and the results given to us. We never heard anything from that. Yeah. Then he was meant to fight AJ for the second time, right? He failed the drugs test there. That fight fell apart, and we had no explanation from him as to what was going on there. You know what I mean?
All-time cheater is Dylan White in combat sports. Once in K1, 3 times in boxing, but 2 of them he's not allowed to talk about because they signed non-disclosures.
Okay, cool. All right. So you're not allowed to talk about it. Okay, that might be a legal thing. You're not allowed to talk about it.
But it
But
happened. It was his system, wasn't it?
Yeah. But the thing is, why is it whenever every time you put a microphone in Dylan White's face and you ask him about AJ, he's got nothing good to say about AJ, nothing good at all. But yet it's his fault, Dylan's fault, why the AJ fight fell apart because you were tested dirty.
Yeah.
This is the thing I'm talking about. But AJ hasn't tested dirty. Why the fight fell apart? Can you imagine if AJ had tested dirty and that fight between him and White fell apart? What White would be saying?
Yeah.
He'd be slating him.
Yeah.
He'd be proper slate. But yet, didn't test dirty. The fight falls apart, and he still wants to slate AJ. How does that work? It's the same with Baby Miller. It's Miller's fault why the AJ fight fell apart. You know, Porkys. I'm not rambling, you know, but you know when but you know that these kind of guys, you know, when Miller was meant to fight AJ the first time,
yeah,
and they had the press conference, and you knew something was up, you know. Now you look back when Miller shoved AJ. Do you see? And AJ's a big guy. Do you see the way AJ kind of went 4 or 5 steps back, did he, from a shove? You think, thank God that fight didn't go ahead.
Okay.
Oh,
listen, yeah. Robbie, it's been a pleasure to have you on for your debut.
And you, son.
How's about that?
Listen, yeah, we'll do it again, Porkys. Thanks for your time, and I think your show's great because you say the stuff people dare not say, and I love that. You know what I mean? It's really good.
Thank you very much, Robbie.
All the best from Peckham. We love you.
Have a good Sunday, mate, down in Peckham.
And you, son.
Cheers, mate.
Take care.
Right. Well, that was Robbie from Peckham. Women love him, men want to smoke weed with him. Well, that's about it, really. Thanks for liking and subscribing and leaving a comment. We'll see you later. We've got Liam on. Booyaka.